Okay, Stuart, welcome to the Yorkshire Voice studio. We really appreciate you taking time out of campaigning to come along and answer a few questions for us.
Pleasure.
Thank you. You're taking time out of campaigning, so let's get on with it. You are Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party, and within that role you have special responsibilities for cities, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Well, I thought one relevant question to get going on then was to do with cities. And I think you'll probably agree with me that one of the biggest issues that is facing cities at the moment is pollution and is the challenge that pollution face. Figures that are bounded about quite a lot now are that 40,000 people die prematurely every year in the UK from pollution. That's more than murder, that's more than car accidents, that's more than terrorism, for example. I suppose my question is, have the Conservatives been a bit slow on this?
Well, no, I think there's a number of areas. First of all, you're absolutely right that this is a very important piece of work that really needs to be done. I think one of the problems we've had is that governments in the past encouraged people to buy diesel cars, and now evidence, shows that actually some of those cars are emitting really bad particles into our cities and causing a lot of these problems that you mention. Now, we've come up with a strategy for that looks at how we can try and mitigate and how we can reduce the number of older vehicles that are polluting our streets in the cities. But it's also about trying to improve public transport within our cities. And, I've personally been very active working with both Leeds City Council and the government to try and secure funding for transport projects in Leeds. And I was delighted that even though the trolleybus scheme was cancelled, the government agreed with our pleas to secure that money for the city. And that's going to bring about a whole raft of new initiatives that will improve bus journey times, make them more reliable, better access to public railways, that we have supporting this constituency and others around the city, so that people can actually get into the city without necessarily using their cars. And then that's been added to by investment that is being promised by the local bus companies to improve their stock.
I think there was a report out in 2016 that showed the spending on transport in Yorkshire and Humber is at a level of £250 per head per year. Compare that to London, which is £1,900 per head per year. You mentioned that you've been trying to bring more money into the region for transport, but I suppose Yorkshire, Leeds in particular, might feel sometimes like London's poor cousin. Are the Conservatives actually going to really address that imbalance?
Well, you're right that historically, and this has happened with successive governments, it's not just us, it's happened when other governments have been in place, that actually London has a significant amount of investment in transport. Now, on the one hand, you can sort of understand it is the capital city, there's huge projects like Crossrail, but that isn't good enough. We do need to see more investment up in the north, because I think there's huge potential with the economies in the north of England. But to really sort of maximise that, we need the good transport links. Now, in fairness to this government, it has put in significant investment. There's more investment happening on our railways than any time since the Victorian era. We're seeing new rolling stock coming for links between Manchester and Leeds.
They sound like quite sort of... the word that's coming to my mind is quite meagre, quite, tweaks, and those things are important. I'm not arguing with that. But when there's such an imbalance between £250, 1,900, that sounds to me like, maybe I'm alone, but that sounds to me like we need a lot of investment. We need some big projects to really get our region moving. I think there was let me have a look, Direct Cities Networks, for example. There was a plan to bring a maglev train across the north. Those kind of big projects are what's really going to redress that balance. Are the Conservatives going to get behind those kind of plans, not necessarily that specific plan? But
yeah, well, and that's one of the reasons why we set up Transport for the North. It was to absolutely address the issues that you're talking about, because for too long, each of the councils were trying to do their own transport infrastructure, we've got to look at this in a far more strategic way. And Transport for the North is going to have the same statutory powers that Transport for London has, and come up with those plans that we really need that will transform how people are transported across the north of England. So, you know, the Rail North, for example, is looking at better connectivity east and west, because that, I think, is where a lot of the problems are. It's also getting rid of these outdated pacer trains that people hate, and understandably so. But also, you know, really good bus services that people can rely on and depend on. But we have also got the investment with HS2, for example, which is going to connect us not just with London, but actually will connect us with Sheffield and South Yorkshire, and then on to Birmingham. And that will hopefully make business more attractive between those cities and bring investment out of London and up into the north of England. So there's a lot of work going on, but absolutely there's always more that could be done.